Welcome back to Lit by the Fire. My name's Ryan, and I'm very excited you're with me this week because we are continuing the recitation of Song of the Sunbird, a book that I wrote almost 20 years ago after I graduated Bible University with a bunch of thoughts about philosophy and spiritual formation and got really excited about C.S. Lewis, Dante, and Plato. So, this book is a children's adventure story, and if you joined us last week, then you will know we are neck deep in the bottom of the earth and about to emerge into a brand new land inside of the earth. So, without further ado, we are going to pick up the story where we left off with chapter 4, Right Side Up. "Help me!" her brother cried out in alarm. Charlie sputtered and choked. The salty water splashed into his mouth and in his eyes. He flung his arms about in all directions and accidentally whacked his sister in the face. "Ouch, Charlie, I'm right here," Suzy said firmly. "Calm down. I'll help us both get up to shore." Suzy had always been a stronger swimmer than Charlie, and he was exhausted. His arms and legs felt weak, and his eyes and lungs stung. As soon as he felt his sister's arm tugging him, Charlie stopped fighting the waves. Suzy paddled forward with her brother in tow, just like Dad had showed her in the pool once. She felt proud to put Dad's instructions to good use. Meanwhile, Charlie floated onto his back and took a relaxing breath. It was much easier to breathe now. The water lapped against his ears. Laying on his back and letting his sister do the swimming, Charlie wondered for the first time where he was. The ocean was lukewarm like a bath, and the air smelled fresh like after a rain. As soon as the saltwater sting had gone away, Charlie opened his eyes. Directly overhead, he saw thousands of dazzling speckles against the dark sky. Stars? They looked much larger and brighter than normal stars. Were they still on Earth? Had they tunneled all the way through the mountain only to pop up again in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? "Charlie, can you swim now?" Suzy asked, all tired out. "Yes, I can," Charlie answered. "You want me to pull you some?" It was a silly offer. He did not know the first thing about rescuing someone from the sea. To tell you the truth, he felt a little humiliated because his sister had saved his life. But thankfully, they were close to shore. Both kids realized the sand was right beneath their feet. When they finally broke free from the water, they felt strangely energized. It was wonderful being above ground again, even if they were in an unknown place. They trudged up the beach and joined Archibald and Gregory on a sandy hill. The journey had taken all their strength, but they had made it. As Charlie wrung out his shirt, Suzy asked Archibald the question all children ask at some point in their lives. "Are we there yet?" "Yes, we're here, in the outermost lands of the Empyrean," Archibald exclaimed. "If you look carefully, you will see that we're standing on the inside of the Earth's crust." The kids turned about, and the whole land opened before their eyes. It appeared they were standing, strange enough, at the bottom of an enormous bowl. Behind them, the curling ocean stretched into the distance, where the waters rose upward before their eyes. The sea curved up the inside of the earth in a wide arc. Looking the other way, they traced the beach inland as it faded into a dark forest, and beyond, the rolling plains rose upward in the same way as the sea. For a moment, Charlie imagined he was inside a giant snow globe. At the farthest distance, the children saw a craggy bulge sticking out of the earth, a mountain so tall it seemed to scrape the sky. "I don't understand," Charlie muttered. "What about gravity? Why aren't we falling toward the center of the earth?" "Didn't you feel disoriented when gravity changed and flipped us upside down?" Archibald asked him. "Instead of pulling us toward the center of the earth, now it pushes us away from the center. It's rather complicated." That's what the kids had felt underwater. Suzy had assumed it was only the sea currents, but as it turned out, gravity had been changing directions. Gregory just laughed. Archie, you funny fellow. Don't try to explain it to them. It's enough to know that we're standing right side up, and just over our heads at the center of it all, the clouded kingdom awaits. Where? Suzy asked as she leaned back and searched the night sky. All I see are stars. Ah, that's a clever trick, isn't it? Said Archibald, waving his wing. That's the handiwork of the magician who lives on the White Mountain over there. It was the mountain the kids had seen in the distance. The dark sky is really a great big black canopy wrapped around the center of the earth. We birds poked holes all over it. Those stars are only illusions. Their light is really sun rays from the other side. The birds fly in and out of the clouded kingdom through those holes. Do you see now? We're nearly home. But how will we get there? Charlie wondered, staring at the sky. We can't fly. Oh, no need to worry about that, Gregory stated cheerfully. The Eagle King himself will come and pick us up. He's big enough to carry a dozen people. That's right, the robin remarked. King Gaylord said he'd wait for us at the flat rock. It's only a short hike further. And then we'll read the letter, Suzy grinned. And eat dinner, too, Charlie said. I'm starved. Once the kids stood up, however, they realized how stiff and sore they were. Their wet clothes hung heavy against their bodies. Their shoes were soggy, and so they took them off and went barefoot in the sand. The breezy air was warm, but Charlie and Suzy shivered. What they would give to be dry and snuggled up in their beds. The starlight was brighter than those bits of cloud in the underground tunnels. Their path ahead shone clear. It was a good thing, too, because Charlie had completely lost the headlamp when he dived underwater. It was probably far out to sea by now. Suddenly alarmed, he seized his pocket to look for Grandpa's compass. It was still there. That was the one thing he did not want to lose. What would he do if he lost his sense of direction? Meanwhile, Suzy cried out behind them. Her silver watch had stopped. Even though it was waterproof, the hands were stuck at 6:15. Had the salty water messed it up, or had it stopped for some other reason? It did not matter. She knew that Mom and Dad would be sad to see their gift broken. Sorry about your watch, sis, her brother said. It's okay, Suzy girl, Gregory told her a moment later. You won't need to tell the time anymore while you are here. In the Empyrean, the sun is always in the same place in the sky, directly over your head. We don't keep track of days and hours like you do on Earth, but you'll see what I mean soon enough. The four travelers followed the coastline with Archibald leading the way, and Gregory following behind. They listened to the waves crashing against the shore. All of the familiar salty smells of the beach clung to their noses. They had never seen seawater so glassy clear, and for miles the starry reflection of the sky glossed its surface. Charlie noticed something beneath his bare feet. Little sand crabs were scurrying in every direction, trying not to get caught. Charlie and Suzy laughed. Catching sand crabs was one of their favorite things to do at the beach. And these crabs were different than those on Earth. Their bodies glowed like fireflies. The kids chased one little light down to the edge of the water. Don't go too far now, Archibald chided, flying ahead. We need to keep pace. Charlie and Suzy began to notice that they were not alone on the beach. Mixed into the waves, the kids saw exotic oceanids, like nothing they had seen on Earth. They looked like dancers, so thin and pale that their skin was nearly translucent. They spun around, hands raised and arms wide open, singing out over the waters. Had these strange creatures been silent, you may never have noticed them. In a lustrous harmony, their voices rang. The imperial depths are in his hands, and the mountains belong to him as well. The sea is his, yes, every surging swell, and with his wings he formed the vast heartlands. Before Charlie or Suzy could ask who the song was referring to, they found Archibald had flown off the beach and was now calling them to the edge of the dark forest. Too bad, they thought to themselves, it would have been fun to build a sandcastle and watch those beautiful ocean dancers. But by the time the kids caught up to Archibald, the robin was moving on, saying, I probably shouldn't be taking us here, but I know a shortcut through these woods. We'll need to stick close together. Beneath the trees, there is less light to see by, and the darkness can be rather mischievous. Besides, we wouldn't want the magician to find us. The magician? Was he looking for them? Charlie and Suzy reluctantly followed their friend into the thick overgrowth. As the trees became crowded, they felt the darkness closing in. Starlight filtered down through layers of branches, making scary shadows on the floor. It grew hard to see each other. Every tree was a black silhouette, possibly concealing some awful creature behind it. Cricket noises and shaking leaves and flapping wings rushed in the kids' ears. Suddenly, the children could not remember why they were here and where they were going. Was the darkness playing tricks on them? On their right, where the shadows fell, Suzy could see into a grassy clearing. She blinked and squinted to see. Several shapes were obvious. First, she saw a shape as gray as stone lying motionless on the grass. On top of it was a completely different shape, dimly colored in red and orange feathers. A yellow beak curved out from around its head. Yes, the upper shape was a large bird. It was facing away from her and did not see her. And the lower half, the gray shape, could it be the flat rock that they had been looking for? The picture was so puzzling that Suzy stopped in her tracks to figure it out. Now Archibald had flown a little too far ahead, and Gregory had fallen a little too far behind. Charlie saw his sister had gotten distracted and thought this was the perfect opportunity to give her a fright. He crept up behind her, his mouth twisted into a smirk. Leaning forward right next to her ear, he cried, Gotcha! Suzy screamed and pushed her brother away angrily. He laughed at her expense. Charlie, why do you have to be so mean? She snapped. Lighten up, Suze. We should be having fun. We're on an adventure, her brother said. What are you staring at, anyway? Suzy looked back at the mysterious bird. It had twisted its head around and now appeared to be gazing at them with its beady black eyes. It remained motionless and silent. What kind of bird is that? Suzy whispered. Well, it's an eagle, of course, Charlie replied confidently. Do you think that's the bird we are supposed to meet? He's sitting on a flat rock, she observed. Charlie squinted. It was too dark to tell. Should they call the others and let them know? Yet this seemed like the perfect opportunity to do some exploring on their own. Let's go check it out ourselves, just in case, he said with conviction. We'll be quick about it. On a whim, Suzy agreed, and they quietly snuck closer to the bird, keeping hidden behind the trees. The eagle head faced their direction, but it was impossible to tell if the bird had seen them. Its eyes were so black. Suddenly it became clear that the rock was not flat, but sloped, and covered in gray fur with a mangy tail. In other words, it was not a rock at all. Meanwhile, Gregory, with his keen ears, heard them veer off course. He tried to follow, groping along in the dark as he shouted, Hey, where did you two go? Charlie and Suzy did not hear him. They watched as the rock suddenly stood upright and the eagle let out a loud, piercing screech. The two shapes were oddly connected so that the upper half was an eagle's head and the lower half was a lion's legs. The giant bird lion charged the kids and scooped them up in either paw before they could run away. "Archibald, come quickly!" Gregory cried, aware that something had gone terribly wrong. The creature heard the noise and readied its wings to escape. The wings had only the illusion of feathers painted on them, otherwise they were thick and leathery like a bat. They began to beat up and down with great whooshing strokes. Now Gregory, as bold and as foolhardy as a mole can get, leaped in the direction of the flapping wings. With a stroke of luck, he landed on the beast's tail and bit into it with all his might. The bird lion shrieked in agony, and it dropped Charlie and Suzy to the ground. Archibald finally arrived. "A griffin! Here! Charlie, Suzy, run as fast as you can! You must reach the clouded kingdom!" The kids did not need to be told twice. They picked themselves up and stumbled away from the beast. Suzy took one last look behind her. The little robin pecked at the griffin's grisly hide while avoiding swipes from its claws. Gregory still hung onto the tail. The griffin was whipping him back and forth, trying to loose the stubborn mole's fierce, toothy grip, without success. And with Archibald nipping away at the griffin's beady eyes, the kids were able to make their getaway. Suzy turned just in time to duck under a branch and jump over a root. The sound of the encounter grew distant behind them. The trees spread fewer and farther between. Immediately, both brother and sister found themselves on the other side of the forest, in the open starlight again. Their sides were cramped with pain. "We need to keep moving," gasped Charlie, his hands on his knees. Suzy was on the verge of tears. "But our friends, we must do something," she pleaded. "Maybe we can find some help," her brother said, "once we get to the clouded kingdom. I don't want to stay in this Heartlands place any longer than we have to." "But they're in trouble now," Suzy cried. "Let's hurry then and find the flat rock," Charlie ordered. They tried to jog onward, but it hurt too much. Charlie had twisted his ankle when the griffin dropped him, so he was slightly limping. Before their eyes was a stretch of rolling hills. The kids knew they would find the flat rock over one of these hills, but which should they climb first? Charlie, taking command, set his mind to climbing all of them. He constantly left his sister behind to get the first look over the next ridge. Suzy just tried her best to keep from panicking. Hill after hill turned up nothing but more hills. Now they were some distance from the forest, and there was no sign of their companions. Should they wait? What if the griffin came looking for them? Suzy's mind was a blur, but she knew who was to blame. "It's your fault," Suzy accused Charlie bitterly. "We shouldn't have snuck off on our own in the first place." "My fault?" Charlie rose in his defense. "It was you who found the creature. You wanted to know what it was, so we went to take a look." "Yeah, but I didn't want to leave Gregory and Archie behind, and now they're dead and we're lost." "What can we do about it now?" Charlie retorted. They were both so angry with each other. Not only were they scared, they were tired and very hungry too. Over every hill was another disappointment. "I want to go home," Suzy declared. "Yeah, good luck. You'll have to go back through the forest, and that griffin will be there waiting for you." Suzy began to cry. This made Charlie all the more upset. He was trying to make the most of their situation, and his sister was not helping one bit. "Stop crying," he said forcefully. She sniffled and fell silent. The tears streamed down Suzy's cheeks, but Charlie did not see them. They reached the top of a particularly big hill. In front of them, they saw the hills flatten into a great shadowy plain. Had they missed the flat rock? The landscape, in the shape of a bowl, curved upward for miles and miles. The stars and the sun above them were miles further still. They had no way of reaching the clouded kingdom without the wings needed to get them there. But dare they turn back for the forest? To his right, Charlie saw a group of boulders forming the mouth of a cave. Perhaps they should find shelter for the night. "We can look again in the morning," he told his sister. "It will be easier to see in the daylight." Of course, Charlie had completely forgotten that the Empyrean works differently than the Earth. The sun does not rotate around the land, but the land encloses the sun. And with the magician's black veil covering the light, there would be no morning. "There's nowhere to sleep," Suzy protested. "Let's see what's inside here," he replied, walking down into the cave. As they passed the huge stones that marked the entrance, the kids had the feeling of deja vu. Just like when they entered Grandpa's basement, the darkness covered their eyes. However, this time they felt as though they had entered a comfortable living space. The ground was soft and spongy, possibly carpeted. The warm fireplace glowed somewhere deeper inside. The air was thick with fragrance, causing both Charlie and Suzy to yawn uncontrollably. "We'll figure it out in the morning," Charlie assured. He found he was sliding to the floor and curling up to sleep. The air made his head feel fuzzy, but in his heart he felt utterly ashamed. He too felt like crying, mostly for all the mistakes he had made that day. He did not know what to do, and that to him was something scarier than the griffin. Suzy, too, was nodding off. She had half a mind to tell her brother how she felt betrayed. But the sun had already set in her heart, and now it was too difficult to keep her eyes open. Had she been able to, she would have seen a large shadow moving on the wall. Chapter 5. Vincent. Sometimes you dream when you fall asleep with a lot on your mind. Charlie and Suzy drifted off to sleep mad at each other, and what's more, scared and unsure of their lonely situation. Without Archibald and Gregory, they were lost in the Empyrean. All the two kids could dream about was how their wondrous adventure had taken a wrong turn. Charlie's dream took him back in the dark forest, though it looked a lot like the woods outside Grandpa's house. He had his compass in hand. He tried to follow it through the wood, but the arrow kept pointing in different directions. In frustration, he threw it away, far away, into the ocean. He searched his way now without it, but he was getting more lost by the minute and heading deeper into the misty forest. Up to this point, Charlie thought he had been looking for a way out, but suddenly he realized that he was running from the griffin. It was right behind him, snapping at him with huge lion claws. Charlie fled with all his heart, but his legs would not move. They were so weak and numb that he could not gain control over them. He ran in slow motion like he was knee-deep in thick mud. Suzy called to him, telling him to hurry and tugging at his arm. How was it she could move freely while he was so helpless? As Charlie struggled in his forest, Suzy's dream took her back underground. She followed Charlie and her friends down the tunnel. Charlie was moving too fast, and the light from his headlamp was fading round the corners of the tunnel. Gregory called for her, but she could not find him. Now the headlight had completely disappeared, leaving her alone in the black tunnel. A creeping sound stopped her heart. Behind her, a giant spider suddenly reached out and grabbed her. She cried for help, but her friends could not hear. The spider galloped as fast as a horse up the tunnel as she struggled frantically to get loose. Right when her fears were at their worst, something peculiar happened in the dream. A strong odor stunk up her nose, causing her to think, "Ugh, what's that smell?" Even as the spider carried her away, she could no longer think of her fears, only about getting away from that awful stink. She woke up. The smell was no dream. It came from a waxy yellow candle sitting next to her bed. She turned around and plugged up her nose in the pillow. Was Grandpa playing a practical joke on her? Aside from the smell, she was delightfully comfortable. Her bed sheets were fluffy and warm, and her clothes were dry. It was just like being at home, except she was not at home. The pillow was different. It had what looked like brown dog hairs shed all over it. Where was she? Very slowly, she peeked out from beneath the sheets. Candlelight glowed warmly on the walls of a cave. Etched into the stone ceilings were finely drawn figures and formulas and artistic visions. Some were blueprints of flying machines. Others were descriptions of star constellations and their movements. Who carved these drawings? Suzy suddenly saw the answer to her question. Sitting at a wooden desk in the corner of the room was a rather enormous figure clothed in starched green robes. His shoulders were wide apart and his belly rolled out. Suzy could not see the face, only the back of its neck and two rounded ears, which were covered in brown hair. It looked to be a brown bear, possibly very dangerous. Thankfully, he had not heard her wake up, for he was still scribbling at his desk. By now, Charlie stirred awake from his dream. He found he was lying right next to Suzy in the same bed. This fact was very unpleasant for the both of them, but there were more important things to worry about. Suzy whispered to her brother, "Keep it down. I think I see a bear over there." "What's that awful smell? Why are we here?" Charlie mumbled groggily. In the back of his head, he was still trying to figure out the end of his dream. The griffin had suddenly flown away and let Charlie be. Had it smelled what he had smelled, that rotten, waxy stench coming from somewhere in the room? Now that Charlie was fully awake, he glanced round the cave. They appeared to be in a kind of L-shaped corner, where in one direction the cave opened to the outside, and in the other direction it went deeper underground. On the nightstand, Charlie saw the source of all their ills, that dreadful yellow candle. He silently blew it out, and the smell went away. At that instant, the bear sniffed the air. He slowly turned his head around, a great brown head with a fat snout and thick eyeglasses. Charlie and Suzy immediately shot under the covers to hide. The bear strode forward, snatching the corner of the bedsheets and tossing them off with a jerk. Suzy screamed. The bear roared. Now both kids leapt off the bed and fled for their lives. Charlie knew that the route to safety was on the right, the path that led outside. But Suzy had already dashed left. She was heading deeper into the cave. "Suzy, wrong way!" Charlie yelled as he ran after her with the bear lumbering in pursuit. "She'll no doubt come to a dead end," he thought, "and then we'll both be dead meat." The path rolled forward between the rough cave walls and down to a flight of steps. Suzy reached the bottom of the steps. Suddenly, she found herself in a giant circular room lit by groups of candles in various colors and sizes. A giant boxy telescope was built into the center of the room. As the rumble of the bear's feet got closer, she saw there was no windows or doors, no way to escape. Charlie tripped and collided into Suzy. The bear collided into Charlie, and the three of them went crashing to the floor. Dirt flew up as the children scrambled on their hands and knees, but the bear grabbed them by the ankles before they could go any further. He stood up tall and held both kids suspended in midair. They yelled and kicked, but it was of no use. "I knew that candle would do the trick," the bear said in a rich, roaring voice. "You two wouldn't wake up before, and now you can't stop squirming." "Put us down," Suzy cried.
I'd be glad to, the bear replied. But first you have to promise not to touch anything. This room is very important to me, and I can't have you fiddling with my experiments.
We promise, Charlie answered, feeling dizzy. The blood was rushing to his head.
Very well,
The bear said, and he gently lowered them to the ground. While the children got to their feet, the bear carefully straightened his green robes. They looked rather like a scholar's graduation robes. They were stunning and even noble looking. Charlie and Suzy realized that if the bear had wanted to eat them, he probably would have done so already.
I don't blame you, the bear remarked with an air of intelligence. The smell of those candles sometimes makes me run around in circles too. I call them waking candles, though I don't quite know what their magic purpose is. I light one whenever I'm falling asleep at my work.
Then the bear leaned in and whispered something the kids wished they had never heard.
I make them from the wax in my inner ear.
Gross, Charlie gagged, but secretly it made him want to go back and take another look. That must be a lot of earwax.
Now I suppose you ought to tell me your name, since it was you who ventured into my cave uninvited.
The bear sat down on a nearby stool and patiently stared at them over his thick spectacles. Charlie boldly made the introduction. Well, my name's Charlie, and this is my sister Suzy. We didn't know you lived here.
Yes, I figured as much. You arrived, I believe, while I was in hibernation, while I was burning one of my sleeping candles. You must have smelled it when you came in, because it knocked you both out cold. I found you fast asleep and brought you into my bed. I even lit a fire to dry out your wet clothes.
Thank you for taking care of us, Suzy said shyly.
You're welcome,
the bear returned with an awkward smile. Suzy could see he was very serious and perhaps not used to common kindness.
Oh, and I'm called Vincent, he told her.
Are you a candle maker? Charlie asked.
A magic candle maker, Vincent corrected. I use the drugs of several plants to flavor the candles. Different colors and scents achieve different results.
Pointing to a collection on the laboratory table, he continued.
You can see this green candle is for concentration, and this orange candle is for good luck. Their power seems to increase with the size of the candle.
Suzy was suspicious. They looked like ordinary candles. In her mind, anyone who practiced magic must be on the magician's side. Yet when she gazed into Vincent's face, she felt he was trustworthy. All she could see was a lonely bear who was perhaps too curious for his own good. Vincent continued grandly.
I am an inventor, Charlie, with interests in artistry, astronomy, and alchemy. I study nature and run experiments and record my theories on the walls of this cave. This special room is my laboratory. From here I observe all that is in the world, and I understand how it all hangs together. For example, I discovered, before anyone else, mind you, that the world is not flat. It's round. Were you to walk in one direction, not altering your course, you would go in a giant loop and return to the place where you started from.
Of course, the kids already knew this, and they were not that impressed.
That's not all I know about, the bear said defensively. I built this telescope you see here to help me measure the stars and look for patterns. I can predict when the constellations come and go. For instance, the Griffin constellation is in the sky right now, and in a matter of hours the Serpent constellation will take its place."
The kids looked at each other. The Griffin constellation? They had nearly forgotten about the forest and the fight in their terrible dreams. Had the robin and the mole escaped, and were they looking for the kids even now? "Charlie, we need to find Archie and Gregory," Suzy whispered anxiously. In a minute, Suzy. Maybe Vincent can help us." The bear tilted his head.
What is the matter?"
he asked. "Well, you see," Charlie explained, "Suzy and I were traveling through the forest with some friends of ours, and we fell under attack by a horrible monster. We left our friends behind fighting the thing. I think it was a griffin."
Vincent scoffed. "That would be strange indeed. Griffins are only mythical creatures, and simply put, they don't exist. It must have been something else that attacked you."
"Either way," Suzy spoke up, "we need help to go look for our friends. Will you come with us, Vincent?" The bear stood up and walked to his telescope, deep in thought.
I'm afraid I am much too busy with my research," he said sternly. "You will have to find someone else to help you."
"At least, then, tell us how to get to the Clouded Kingdom," Charlie said.
Never heard of it," answered the bear.
"What?" Charlie stammered. The Clouded Kingdom, on the other side of the stars. You know, where the sun and the Sunbird are. That's the whole reason we're here."
"On the other side of the stars," Vincent repeated, baffled. "I've been studying the stars for years, and I can tell you there is nothing on the other side but darkness and empty void. Where did you hear of such nonsense?"
Now Suzy was getting upset. "But you're wrong. Archibald the Prince lives in the Clouded Kingdom with all the other birds. He says the dark sky is just an illusion set up by the evil magician."
"Ah, yes," Vincent declared. "I've heard of legends about magicians and sunbirds before, but I've never seen anything like that through my telescope. I've never seen anything I couldn't explain through a more humble means."
The bear motioned them to the large telescope.
"Go ahead, see for yourself."
Charlie squatted down, and Vincent adjusted the eyepiece to his level. The telescope lens was built into the hill so that you could observe the sky from the laboratory underground. Charlie had difficulty getting it focused. At last, when the picture was clear, he only saw one plain star. It was perfectly white and round, as you would expect any star to be, set against the black night sky. From what he could tell, there was nothing behind it. Charlie looked disappointed. "Let me see," Suzy said as she put the rubber piece around her right eye. It was still a little blurry. She moved the knobs to focus the image. In the middle was a single bright star. It looked like the night sky on Earth. Could Archibald have been mistaken? Was it all some kind of trick? Right when Suzy was about to give up hope, she saw something. A tiny red flame appeared within the star. It danced and burned the sky away around it, making the star twice as big as before. Suzy's perspective completely changed. She was no longer looking at a star at all, but a round hole in the sky. On the other side were the tips of sunlit clouds. Suddenly, the red flame turned her way. It had a face and feathers, like the bird she saw in the ocean before she jumped off the brink. That flame was the majestic Sunbird. "I knew it was true," she shouted in triumph. "Charlie, look quick." "I don't know, Suzy. It looked just like the sky to me," he said, discouraged. "But it's not," she insisted. "I see the Sunbird. He's waiting for us to come." Vincent's brown ears perked up.
"The Sunbird? Let me take a look."
The bear pushed Charlie and Suzy aside and gazed into the telescope himself. His bumbling body was bent in half over that little eyepiece. The kids watched as his eyes widened and his body stiffened. What did he see? Something was obviously happening.
What's going on? Is that a shooting star? Oh my! Duck for cover!
The bear cried, leaping back. The next moment, a thunderous sound cracked over their heads. The kids jumped away from the telescope in the nick of time. An explosion knocked them to the ground and blew out all the candles. The kids heard shattering glass and the earth shaking all around them. The telescope was now in a billion little pieces all over the cave floor. And where the lens had once been, there was now only a broken hole in the roof. The starlight shined through the dusty wreck and landed on Vincent's face. The bear looked bewildered. His robes were mangled and his spectacles missing. Charlie and Suzy helped him to his feet. "What happened, Vincent? What did you see?" Suzy asked.
"I can't explain it," he replied.
"That was awesome!" Charlie shouted. It was quite inconsiderate of him to say that in view of Vincent's loss. His laboratory was now in ruins. The depressing silence was broken by the sound of candle wax dripping onto the floor. "Sorry about your work," Suzy said kindly. Vincent sighed and pulled himself together.
"Oh, what does it matter now? It appears, Suzy, there is at least one thing I've been wrong about. Those stars are actually holes in the sky leading to another world. It's time to test a new theory. I know a way to get us to the other side."
"How?" Charlie and Suzy said together.
"The White Mountain," the bear replied. "According to my observations, the mountain and the sky actually touch each other at its peak. If those star holes are gateways to other kingdoms, then we should be able to climb right through."
Charlie very much agreed with this adventurous plan, but Suzy did not like it one bit. "We should find the flat rock first," she insisted. "Well, who knows where that is?" Charlie argued. "Even if we found it, who's to say that the eagle will be there? We may be stuck forever waiting. With Vincent's plan, we can get to the Clouded Kingdom and not have to wait at all." "But Charlie, the magician's castle is on top of that mountain. What if he finds us?" Suzy had a point. Charlie, however, turned to the candle maker. "You know a little magic, right? We could use it in case we meet the magician."
"This room held most of my stock of candles and inventions, but now they're all melted and worthless. However," Vincent reasoned, "I keep my best candles in the bedroom. There are a few candles for protection, and I've always wanted to test out my invisibility candle. Yes, I suppose I know enough magic to keep us safe."
"Then that settles it," Charlie concluded. "No, it doesn't, Charlie. I'm not going," Suzy remarked stubbornly. "Well, I'm not staying either," her brother replied, "and we have to stick together." They were at odds, and the bear played the peacemaker.
"Perhaps we can look for the flat rock along the way. If we find it, then we'll stop and wait for your friends. Otherwise, it would be silly not to try."
Suzy decided this was her best option and went along with the plan. She was bitter she did not have a choice in the matter. It felt like Charlie was constantly turning against her. She wondered if he even cared about finding Archibald and Gregory. Fresh fear filled her heart. Without Charlie, there was no one to look after her. As her brother readied their supplies with Vincent, she stepped outside and stared out over the heartlands. Her first impression of this place had been wonder and excitement. Now she was really scared, and not even the friendly starlight could console her. Meanwhile, Charlie busied himself in the bear's bedroom. He collected 3 travel sacks, which might work if they slung them over their shoulders. Vincent showed Charlie his closet where he kept his food stores while he was in hibernation. The situation looked pretty bad and smelled worse. The fruits had flies, the nuts were stale, and the only thing left to bring was vegetables. How unfortunate. Vincent loaded the first stack with potatoes and water. Charlie got to carry the magic candles in his bag. They were carefully wrapped and placed inside. Vincent explained how the candles worked. You needed to strike a couple special rocks together to create a spark, and then the candle could light itself. Once the smell of the candle reached your nose, the magic would have its effect. The purple candle was particularly important. It was the one that could make you invisible. Vincent warned that he had not tried it out, but it was made according to the magic recipe, so it should work. Suzy's sack got filled with their cooking and survival tools. Of course, they did not intend for her to cook the meals. As it turned out, not a one of them knew how to cook, but they decided to bring the utensils just in case. They packed other special tools too, all inventions by Vincent, such as a trowel that would dig up plants without breaking the stem, and a boomerang that would whistle if you threw it over water. Well, how these inventions might be useful for their journey, no one could say, but they certainly looked useful. Charlie called Suzy inside for a meal, their first meal since they left the basement. She walked by without looking at him, and he could tell she was mad. Charlie frowned. What was with the attitude? He was doing all he could to get them to the Clouded Kingdom, and safely for that matter. Why didn't she help him with the packing? It was not long before he was just as angry with her. So neither Charlie nor Suzy spoke to each other during the meal. This left Vincent feeling a little awkward. The meal itself was a kind of nut porridge, which bears love and eat all the time. To the kids, it tasted like peanut butter soup. But Charlie and Suzy were beyond hungry, so even this sounded appetizing. Whether the meal was breakfast or dinner, no one could tell. It felt like lunch in the middle of the night. They also munched on a few fruits that hadn't spoiled. It was enough to take the edge off their hunger, and by the end, the children were less upset with each other. So, with their stomachs full and bags packed, there was nothing left to do but venture out of the cave and up the mysterious mountain. We'll read one more chapter. Chapter 6, What Happened on the Mountain. Throwing their bags over their shoulders, the children and the bear left the cave and climbed the hill. Beneath their feet was the underground laboratory. They could tell because at the top of the hill, a large burnt hole indicated where the telescope had been. Vincent tried to recall exactly what had happened. What was it he had seen in the telescope before everything was destroyed? He explained that it looked like a bright flame falling from the sky. Perhaps a meteorite? Charlie suggested. He realized a moment later that that was as ridiculous as saying there were comets inside the moon. It's something to ask the Sunbird about once we reach the Clouded Kingdom, Suzy replied. Stretching out before the three travelers' eyes lay the path of their journey, curving up to the crest of the White Mountain. First, they needed to cross the dry plains. There the land was as flat as a pancake, which made for easy walking, except for the stickers and thorns that would get stuck in their socks. That might slow things down. After crossing the plains, they would ascend the rolling foothills that surrounded the mountain. Last of all, they would climb the craggy mountain itself. The hike looked daunting from a distance. Charlie tightened his grip on his shoulder bag and set off down the hill. The bear yelped behind him. "What's the matter?" Charlie asked, throwing a look over his shoulder.
Nothing important," Vincent said, nervously pawing the ground. "Just, having second thoughts. You must believe me when I tell you, I've never actually left this hill before. All my life I've studied the world from within the confines of my cave. This is my first venture out into the larger world."
The kids were stunned. How could a bear so smart never have gone on an adventure outside? Suzy encouraged him. "Don't worry, Vincent. If we all stay together this time, we'll be safe. Right, Charlie?" "Of course," he agreed, sensing his sister's doubt. Charlie waited for them to catch up before heading out in front again. In the starlight, the dry grasses that covered the plains were a dim shade of yellow. At first they tried to stomp through the tall grass, but it was slow going and rather scratchy. Vincent then spied a sunken path that wound its way through the weeds. Once they made their way to the bank, they realized the path was a dried-up riverbed. "It looks like the river used to flow down from the mountain," Charlie observed. "We might be able to follow this path all the way to the top." Charlie pressed forward. They found the best way to hike was along the edge of the riverbank. That way they did not have to tread through the sandy bed where sharp stones were cleverly hidden and might cause them to slip or sprain an ankle. Now that they were making progress, the kids were in a better mood. Suzy frequently looked around her for the flat rock. How big would it be? Would it stick out above the dry grass in plain sight? Although she searched in every direction, there were no large rocks in view, much less a flat one. The more distance that grew between her and the dark forest, the less she held out hope of finding the flat rock or of reuniting with Archibald and Gregory. Meanwhile, Vincent was having the time of his life. He had seen the landscapes of the Empyrean from afar through the lens of his telescope, but now he was feeling it and hearing it and smelling it and practically tasting it. The dry air made the bear's lips chapped and sucked all the moisture out of his face. The spicy scent of weeds and pollen made him sneeze. He watched the breeze blow waves and circlets in the grassy fields. A blister formed on his big toe, where the pads of his feet were not used to rough walking. These things would make any normal person grumpy or tired, but for Vincent it was life, new and marvelous. His cheerful attitude made even the painful parts worth the experience.
"I could have done my research out here," Vincent remarked. "To think I've been missing out on all this."
The kid smiled at his excitement. As for Charlie, he enjoyed being the leader again. With the magic candles in his bag, he walked confidently, prepared for anything. He figured there was a chance the griffin was on the prowl. Every time they stopped to rest, Charlie stood in an open area and scanned the sky. Would it fly by, back to its master on the mountain? Charlie took his job as the lookout very seriously. If he spotted anything, he would be the first to light a magic candle. One particular time, Charlie climbed into a barren tree for a better look. The tree was the only one of its kind out in the flat wilderness. Its gnarly limbs bent sideways out of the ground and made the perfect lookout point. "Charlie, come down," Suzy chided, too much like their mother. "In a minute," he replied, irritated. "I think I hear something." Sure enough, in the distance, the kids heard a series of strange noises. What did they sound like? If you can imagine a team of horses neighing underwater, then perhaps that comes the closest to describing what they heard. It was high-pitched and breathy, even melodic. It immediately got stuck inside their heads. What could that be? Suzy asked, intrigued and a little frightened. From his vantage point in the tree, Charlie saw a faint cloud of red dust rising from the foot of the mountain. The noises were coming from that cloud, not too far away. Soon their path would wind out of the plains and get lost among the foothills. Whatever was waiting there in the dust storm would surely see the three of them if they remained in open view.
"We should be careful," Vincent warned. "I've heard stories about the creatures that dwell around the White Mountain. Of course, I never before believed fairy tales and folklore, but now I'm not so sure."
Suzy fretted. What have you heard?
"If I remember correctly," the bear answered, "it is said that travelers who come to the base of this mountain are met with an extraordinary sight. There is a herd of purple unicorns that patrol the mountain, known as the lyrium. They stampede through the hills, driven by wild and unchained desire. Because of their beauty, many travelers have foolishly ventured into their path and been trampled. Legend calls them the sirens of the heartlands."
When Suzy heard the legend, she was filled with curiosity, fear, and an odd anticipation. Deep inside, she had always wanted to see a unicorn. Maybe they could get a glimpse of one from a safe distance. But Charlie decided against it. If the stories say they're dangerous, we should try to go around them. Let's leave the river and head up the side of the mountain. We'll know we're ahead of them if we can just avoid that cloud of dust. Charlie jumped out of the tree and led Suzy and Vincent from the river path into the dead weeds and bushes again. Thankfully, the grassy plains were thinning out, leaving mostly dirt and stones. But the ground was heading uphill, signaling that they had reached the mountain's base. The first leg of their journey was over. Now, climbing the White Mountain would demand all their effort. It loomed large and high over their heads. Up close, the mountain did not seem white at all. The shadows of the night sky made it look dark and foreboding. Several foothills more, and it would be a constant uphill battle to reach the stars. Charlie thought he had led them well out of the way of those strange unicorns that called in the night, but he had not counted on the dusty stampede moving their direction. Suddenly, the red dust cloud rolled out from over a hill and blinded the travelers. The warbling noise of neighing and baying grew loud in their ears, as did the rumble of beating hooves. Was the herd in front of them or behind? The dust made it impossible to know where to escape. "Quickly," Charlie ordered. "Climb! Climb to the top of the ridge!" Charlie and his companions dashed up the side of the mountain toward a small rocky outcrop overlooking the foothills. It was just high enough to keep them out of harm's way. They sat down on the ridge, out of breath, and watched in relief as the dusty haze dissipated behind them. The stampede had only just missed them. It was time for a well-deserved breather. Vincent got out some water, and they drank. Charlie stretched out and planned their next move up the mountain. Suzy, meanwhile, could not get the eerie melody of the lyrium out of her head. The unicorns seemed to be whispering to her, beckoning her forward. More than anything in the world, she wanted a tiny glimpse of their polished horns and graceful flanks. Without quite realizing what she was doing, Suzy stepped over the edge of the ridge, intent on looking over. The same moment, Vincent saw what she was doing and tried to stop her. "No, Suzy, don't look!" Peeking over the edge, a very different sight met her eyes. Down below, nestled between the mountain's rolling foothills, she saw a large white rock in a circle of bright light. Suzy saw there was a star hole positioned directly above the rock. Sunlight from the clouded kingdom shined down upon it like a beacon. But the best part, the most wonderful part to Suzy, was that the rock surface was flat and smooth. Against all hope, she had found it. "The flat rock!" Suzy exclaimed. "Charlie, Vincent, come over here quick! We don't have to climb the mountain anymore. We just need to find a way back down." Charlie stuffed his hands in his pockets and gave it a critical look. "How do you know that's the one?" he asked. Come on, Charlie, said Suzy impatiently. The light is falling on it perfectly, showing us how to get down there. The Sunbird must be leading us to it. The stars, however, rotated ever so slowly through the sky. When Suzy looked back next, the starlight had moved, and the flat rock was now only partly visible. If we don't hurry, we'll miss it, Suzy begged. And we need to get there before the unicorns come back too. Let's go. She was doing her best to convince Charlie and Vincent to come with her, but neither of them moved an inch. I'd rather take my chances with the magician than those unicorns, Charlie told his sister. Besides, we're already halfway to the top. It was part of the deal, she cried angrily. Suzy's right, Vincent muttered with disappointment. He too wanted to climb the mountain, but what choice did they have? I spoke for both of us when I said we would wait at the flat rock if we happened to find it. We should follow Suzy back down. I hate to turn back when we're so close, Charlie pleaded. But we are so close, Suzy argued. The flat rock is the only way to the clouded kingdom. Archie and Gregory said, Who cares about what they said? Her brother interrupted. He was so mad he was getting lightheaded. If they were here, it would be a different story. But since they're gone, we need to make the most of things. So I'm in charge. I say we're going up the mountain. Suzy backed down, seeing he was in an awful rage. But in her heart, what he had said confirmed her deepest fears. You never cared about Archie and Gregory in the first place, she whispered under her breath. She began thinking of all the nasty things she could say to come back at him. Charlie slung his bag over his shoulder and announced their strategy. If we continue along this ridge, we will reconnect with the dry riverbed. That's the quickest route up the mountain. So come on already. The three travelers set off at once, in the poorest spirits yet. Vincent got the same awkward feeling he had had at dinner when the kids would not speak to each other. Only this time the kids were speaking to each other. They were saying all kinds of rude things as they traveled higher up the White Mountain, though Vincent agreed with Charlie's course of action. It took all the fun out of the adventure to have them fighting. My feet hurt, Suzy griped. I can't rest till we reach the next ridge, Charlie ordered. We're lost, she protested. We're almost to the top, he disputed. We'll never make it, she whined. We won't with that attitude, he mocked. He had heard Mom and Dad use this line on him before, and now it gave him some pleasure to use it on his sister. Amidst all the ugly complaining, Charlie and Suzy reached a part in their path that was dangerously steep. Here the dried river angled sharply to form what used to be a small waterfall. Charlie figured if they carefully crawled up the steep part, they would be safe when they climbed onto the ledge above. Charlie, of course, decided to climb first. With his bag slung over his shoulder, he gripped the smooth stones and took a few difficult steps forward. He was halfway up when he suddenly lost his balance. His shoes slipped in the gravel, and he began to slide down on his belly. Suzy screamed, and Charlie's heart leapt out of his chest. At the last second, he grabbed onto a tree root and escaped with only a bloody knee. You see, you're going to get us killed, his sister criticized. Charlie glared at her. Vincent, how about giving me a hand? The bear helped him back to his feet. Charlie was fed up with his sister's grumbling. I don't see any other way up this mountain, he says. We have to help each other out. You can do it on your own, she snapped. Fine, Charlie replied. He took his bag off his shoulder and threw it up onto the ledge. The magic candles landed with a crunch. Suddenly, Charlie realized what he had done. Those candles were very delicate, and the loss might have ruined their power. They're not any good broken, Vincent said, shaking his head.
Hopefully, a few are still intact.
Frustrated with himself, Charlie quickly took Vincent's bag and tossed it up too. However, he did not realize how heavy all the water and potatoes were, so he did not throw the bag with enough force. In dismay, the kids watched as the bag missed the ledge and their food and water came tumbling out. There was nothing they could do to stop the disaster. The potatoes skipped down the mountainside like a miniature avalanche. "Oh, great! Now look what you've done," Suzy moaned. "That was our dinner." But Charlie was determined. "Give me your bag," he said to her. "Are you crazy? I'm not letting you lose our supplies as well," his sister replied. "Fine, you can carry it up by yourself then," Charlie barked. Without another word, he tried climbing up for the second time. More than once it looked as though he was going to fall, but Charlie kept his balance and hoisted himself onto the ledge. Now it was Vincent and Suzy's turn. The bear went next. He dug his claws into the dirt and laboriously pulled his heavy bear body up, 1 foot at a time. It was very difficult for him, but there was little Charlie could do to help. At last Vincent too stood at the top. He heaved a great sigh of relief and went to check on the magic candles. That left Suzy alone on the mountain below. "It's your turn, Suzy," Charlie said. He knew it would be tough for her, especially with her bag still in her hands. He extended his arm down and called, "Come on, I'll pull you up." Suzy stubbornly put her foot down. "No way, Charlie. I'm not going any further up. We should have stayed back and found the flat rock, like I said." "Maybe so, but what can we do about that now?" Charlie said. "We have to stick together." "No, we don't," Suzy replied. "I'm not going to let you lead us into trouble anymore. I'm going back." Her eyes got wet when she thought of Grandpa's house and her bedroom back home. "What are you talking about, Suzy?" Charlie cried, confused. "Archibald said we needed to go together. Come on. We're going to make it to the Clouded Kingdom and see the Sunbird and read the letter." "You can do it by yourself," she told him. She was sobbing now. "I don't care about the Sunbird anymore. I'm going home." With that, Suzy turned with her bag in her arms and started climbing down the mountain. Charlie was at a loss. What could he do or say? He had not anticipated this turn of events, but with every second that passed, his sister was another step away. Bewildered, he silently watched until she had walked some ways down and out of sight. The end for today. Thank you for joining us for this reading. This is the midpoint of the story, and we will pick it up again next week with the 7th chapter as we figure out what happens to the kids now that they are separated in the Heartlands. Thank you for joining me this evening, and have a good night.